Good morning, everyone. The Liberal Party is trying to tell the Conservative Party how to run things without even understanding really how the Conservative Party works. The Liberal Party blue checkmark on Twitter is saying, quote, Aaron O'Toole needs to show leadership by removing Conservative MP Derek Sloan from his caucus and refusing to sign his nomination papers as a Conservative candidate. Add your name if you agree. Now, the Conservatives have to vote somebody out of caucus. The leader doesn't just unilaterally get to expel somebody from caucus. So it's interesting that the Liberals either didn't know that or didn't care enough to look, right? Kind of tone deaf. Like, get your own house in order. I think you have the deputy PM playing double duty as the finance minister. Maybe you need somebody with some financial acumen on board, right? Maybe do some recruiting, right? Get your own house in order before you start throwing stones, right? Here is global news, and I mentioned this the other day on the show, and it was actually published on the 25th of August. I thought it was like last week. I read it. I thought it was really interesting. It's inside the Chinese military attack on Nortel. This is, I talked about it kind of in a throwaway line. I said, like, the Chinese military usurped Nortel and then undersold them from China as Huawei, and this happened, 1999 to 2004, right? And nobody seems to really care. It's really, I mean, they don't care. And this all goes back to Project Sidewinder and Chinese control, and thereby Chinese military control, because any Chinese company is an extension of the Chinese intelligence or Chinese military. So they get control of companies in important sectors like communications, right? Nortel's communications, Canadian communications, gone now, but it was very advanced at the time, and they own it. They purchase it and they continue to run it, or they usurp it, and then you've got Huawei, right? Here's a quick story from yesterday. Yesterday, a bunch of basketball players stopped playing basketball, and this was big news. Everybody said, for a couple of games were canceled because players refused to play, and then the NBA canceled the games because the players refused to play. If you're going to do politics, do politics. If you're going to play a game and get paid millions of dollars as an athlete, don't do politics, right? I think that the push across the NHL, across the NBA, across all of this stuff, and this is the CP24 line. Herdry, I don't know who that. I don't know who that is. I apologize. So if I've said the name wrong, I apologize. Says NHL should have postponed playoff games after NBA boycott. So the NBA boycotted and the NHL played last night, and I guess the NBA guys were expecting the NHL guys to say, yeah, but they didn't. So maybe all of the sports will be canceled again because racism or something. To me, the Black Lives Matter thing that was happening, there was a person shot, and the person shot was a criminal, and he was attacking police from the video I saw. And then another person committed suicide, and then they tried to blame the police officer for shooting him, but that's not true because there was video of the guy committing suicide. So it seems really empty to shut down all the sports for these lies. I mean, if you like sports, that's fine. Like, I don't mind. I'd rather watch a lecture or a monk debate, but okay. Like, if you like sports, that's cool. I just get bored. I don't know. It's not fast enough. And I watch monk debates on 2-speed, so it's not fast enough either. But regardless, if you like sports, you should be able to watch sports, but you should be able to consume sports without all of the extra crap. Right? And it is crap. It's crap. It's contrived BS. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization that took over for Antifa when Trump said he was gonna say that Antifa was a terrorist organization. Like, this is the reality of the situation. And go read their website if you're not sure. They're donating to Biden. Like, it is way more complicated, and complication makes it really difficult for people who are not willing to spend the time to engage with it because it's complicated and they're not interested. They don't care. They'd rather have their sports, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But not being able to consume sports without this kind of propaganda, that's not freedom. That's not good. I think even the historical Germany, Soviet Russia, I think they had sports without propaganda. Maybe not. Does national anthem count as propaganda? Because that's maybe nationalistic propaganda. Is that beneficial to propagandize national unity rather than this divisive garbage? Right? Probably. It's probably better use of propaganda. It's the same circuit in your head, right? Anyway, here's pundit class getting into the first real political story here. Trudeau held a press conference today and nobody asked him about prorogation. the 4 independent investigations by officers of Parliament into his government's corruption, or the 2 police forces who are examining his conduct. That's legacy media for you. Yeah, really, really. Here's Ryan Grieve, and Ryan's out of Alberta, and I started following him. He's a policy wonk. Okay, so anybody who understands what the term wonk means, I want to follow because they're interested in politics too. And he's from Alberta. And he says, this looks like an election campaign. That's exactly what I thought. Yeah, it looks exactly like an election campaign, from the little placard there, and everybody's in masks and all the standing around. I hate this standing around like this. I hate it. It's so, again, it's contrived, it's propaganda-y. It's, we're doing our best. If 6 feet apart works, why do you need the masks? Obvious guy says. Anyway, Dan Albus says, oh wait, there was 2 that I wanted. Oh yeah, this looks like an election campaign. Dan Albus, he's an MP. He's an MP for Central Okanagan, and I've never tried the other ones. I know people have said, I could put it into Google and say, how do you say this? But sometimes that doesn't work either. Because you have to get the cadence right. It's like singing a little bit. Okay, Dan Albus says, why could PM Trudeau not have made today's spending announcement from Ottawa before or after the special COVID committee that was scheduled to sit today? Why did Prime Minister Trudeau have to prorogue Parliament and cancel today's sitting? Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Dan, it was to shut down the investigations into WE, because he was very corrupt and they were going to find out. It might not have worked anyway, but that's why he did it. Okay. Just in case Dan didn't understand. I think it was a rhetorical question, but Here is the Toronto Star, and they say, is Justin Trudeau's $2 billion investment in safe schools a sign he's in election mode? My first thought when I heard this was, schools are a provincial jurisdiction. Why would you be shoveling money at this, right? Like, just stop spending money, stop sending Canadian taxpayer dollars outside of Canada. That would help. That would be beneficial, I think. But no, they're going to trample all over there's a separation between what the province does and what the federal government does. And the federal government says, yeah, I don't care. We're going to just do it anyway. Let's build a hospital, says Jagmeet Singh. Healthcare is also provincial. Okay, here it is. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gave credit to the Liberal MPs and nervous parents for Wednesday's $2 billion top-up to the $19 billion Ottawa is already transferring to provinces for their economic recovery plans. The money and the refusal to share the credit is another sign that the federal election is not far from Trudeau's mind. And despite his protests to the contrary, he is not entirely unwilling to face voters at this time. Trudeau said he respects that schools from kindergarten to grade 12 fall under provincial responsibility, but in pouring in billions more to quell parents' nerves in a pandemic, he was implicitly saying their plans weren't enough. I scroll down. I'll read all of his quotes. Quote, over the past week or so, I've heard from so many Liberal MPs and so many parents across the country who are still extremely worried about how that reopening is going to go, he said in Toronto. You know what I'm worried about as a parent? The only thing I'm worried about is the unbelievable rhetoric that's being spread by the teachers' unions and irresponsible politicians about how scary this whole thing is. I'm going to show you a chart in just a minute to put it into perspective. But this irresponsible rhetoric is going to affect our kids. Masking our kids, mandatory masks, sending them back in this kind of environment is going to do much more harm than the virus ever could. I'm going to find that chart right now because it's important. Here it is. This is age distribution of annual deaths in Canada, 2014 to 18 average versus COVID-19 deaths. Okay, the COVID-19 deaths, and there's the sources is Statistics Canada. Link is in the description if you want to investigate all this. Okay, and the age distribution of annual deaths. Okay, so 0 to 19, 3,100 deaths usually. The blue is 2014 to 2018 and annual average deaths. That's from flu, car accidents, you name it, and COVID deaths, 1. Okay, 20 to 29, almost 3,000, 2,946, 9 COVID deaths, 4,044 in the 30 to 39 and 15 COVID deaths, 7,000 in the 40 to 49, just ballparking now, 50 COVID deaths in that age range. In 50 to 59, 20,000 roughly, and 210 COVID deaths, 60 to 69, 38,000 and 645 COVID deaths, 70 to 79, 56,000 and 1,600 COVID deaths, and 80 plus, 137,000 and 6,000 COVID deaths. The rhetoric they're trying to push and that's the wrong one. The rhetoric they're trying to push and the fear that they're trying to drive is going to do much more damage to the children than COVID ever could. Really. And like, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We should be celebrating. We should be celebrating that there's an effective treatment in hydroxychloroquine. We should not be silencing doctors. There's all sorts of good things happening, and everybody's rattling the saber of terrible, terrible, awful, scary. It's really just, and it's a lot of propaganda. It's a lot of incorrect information. It's wild. It's wild. It's something to experience, that's for sure. Okay, back to this. Quote, what we realize when we saw the level of anxiety and preoccupation that parents across the country had still, even with those plans in place, we realized we could give the provinces even more resources. Ontario is set to receive $763.34 million, and Doug Ford wasn't looking a gift horse in the mouth. Quote, we appreciate the money. We're grateful, he said. We're going to use it very cautiously. For the second time in a week, Ford was effusive in his praise of Trudeau and says he made his feelings known to other premiers on a call the day before. Quote, I know a few other premiers weren't happy that someone was stepping on their toes. Federal jurisdiction isn't education, and so forth and so on, Ford said after Trudeau's announcement. I just said very simply to the premiers, guys, we understand that. The money also comes with a few strings, Ford said, and we're grateful for that. I want to thank the Prime Minister for that. For the strings? I don't understand that quote. And Ford didn't say the money also comes with strings. Ford said, we're grateful for that, and I want to thank the Prime Minister for that. I just don't understand how that adds up. Thank you for making this $2 billion have strings and restrictions. And like, okay, yeah, you got to spend it on education, but like, it's an odd thing to praise. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said his party had been calling for weeks for the Prime Minister and the federal government to step up. On August 12th, the New Democrats sponsored a motion that was adopted unanimously in the House of Commons calling for increased federal transfers on childcare in schools. They took credit for Trudeau's move on Tuesday. It was Jagmeet Singh, right? Oh my goodness. Singh said more is needed, including an extra $2 billion for childcare just to keep existing spaces open with all the extra safety precautions necessary, growing to more than $10 billion over the next 4 years. What? There's no evidence that this is going to carry on the next 4 years. SARS went away, MERS went away, they all went away without a vaccine. Why would this be any different? Back to this. But Trudeau did not give a nod to the NDP on Wednesday, hailing only the efforts of those in his own party. The Prime Minister didn't consult Singh on the announcement, nor has he reached out to the NDP in advance of the coming throne speech. So I think it's funny here, the NDP is peacocking around because they don't understand the jurisdiction is provincial instead of federal. I mean, it seems really silly. Here's a breakdown of how the spending goes. Ontario gets $763 million, but only 368, I think, at first. 381? Yeah, 381 this fall, and then another 400 in January. So only half now, right? But anyway, and there's a breakdown of all the other provinces. Link is in the description. I'm not going to go through it now because I'll just go long. And it's like reading baseball stats, you know? My mom hated that. She doesn't listen to baseball now. Back to this, Mr. Bernier is saying the pandemic was just a pretext. Trudeau's goal was to throw money at everyone and everything and massively grow the size of government in a permanent way. Up to $22 billion in COVID aid may have gone to high-income Canadians. I don't know what they classify as high-income Canadians. I'll leave the link in the description. You can check out the National Post article. There's a couple of other financial ones I wanted to read, so we'll focus on them. Here's a Financial Post, and this is published August 26th. Today is the 27th. I haven't said that yet. So Justin Trudeau plots Canada's sharpest turn left in economic policy in decades. Oh, can you wait? He's not only is he not respecting provincial federal jurisdiction, he's turning us left. Let's go even further left. They're well past the NDP at this point. They're well past the NDP. Okay, back to this. Justin Trudeau's selection of Chrystia Freeland to be Canada's new finance minister cements her place as his most trusted lieutenant, hinting the 52-year-old former journalist isn't done with their political rise. But its real significance is that it signals the most decisive lurch to the left in economic policy in at least 4 decades. Freeland has firmly established herself as Trudeau's Miss Fix-It during the 5 years in power, handling President Donald Trump on trade and the energy-rich Western provinces on their grievances. Has she done a good job on either? Can anybody say? Yes, Alberta is so happy now, and Donald Trump loves Chrystia Freeland. Not at all. Like, not even a little tiny bit. Donald Trump was begging Trudeau, anybody but Freeland, please send anybody but Freeland. We'll give you a better deal if you send anybody but Freeland. And what does Trudeau do? Promotes her. And while continuing to make her the point person to negotiate the USMCA. Unbelievable. Okay. She's now being tasked with nothing less than remaking the country's socio-economic architecture. Yay, on zero experience. Back to this. As she put in her inaugural news conference, COVID-19 offers a fabulous opportunity for our country to craft an equitable and green recovery. How tone-deaf and silly do you have to be to cast this in that light? Oh, it's a great opportunity. We're so excited about it. This echoed Trudeau's own promise to get through the pandemic in a way that gives everyone a real and fair chance at success, not just the wealthiest 1%, right? And not those evil oil and gas people either, right? Back to this parliamentary reset. She's got a tough few months ahead of her, but she brings a lot of good things to the table, and I don't think you can question her commitment and her fortitude, said Scott Clark, a former senior official from Canada's finance department. If your two things about what you're saying about your finance minister are, I don't think you can question their commitment and fortitude, well, great. Maybe we don't question those things. Maybe we question their experience and their willingness to send Canada through a communist hellhole scape of financial disasters, because it looks like that's what Chrystia Freeland wants to do. Let's spend more money. Yay, let's just throw money at whatever problem there is. Yay. So the rest of this article is kind of a glowing, like Chrystia Freeland's going to do a great job spending money, because I'm sure that she will, because somebody's told her just turn the taps on. Remember what Mr. Morneau did? Spend more than that, and then you'll be good. Okay, here's National Post. Extension of COVID-19 spending, which is essentially the program we were just talking about, the $37 billion. Until 2021, a credibility risk for Canada, economists say. A recent move by federal government to extend its major COVID-19 assistance program well into 2021 risks turning Canada's deficit into a structural shortfall. So if it becomes permanent, it's not just a deficit that money will come back into the fold. Like if it's carrying through extra years, we have to budget for that, and there's no money to budget for that. Okay, back to this. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announced last week that Ottawa would be extending its Canadian emergency response by another month, then effectively replacing the CERB with a new program, the Canadian Recovery Benefit, CRB, which until September 2021, the new CRB will give $400 a week for 26 weeks to Canadians who are ineligible for employment insurance, compared with $500 a week under the CERB. Ottawa is also tweaking EI rules to make it available to any workers who can demonstrate at least 120 hours of work. That's 3 weeks of full-time work. Okay, 40, 80, 120. Some economists and fiscal experts say the one-year extension goes against months of warnings that Ottawa risks turning temporary COVID-19 spending measures into permanent fixtures as the pandemic enters its sixth month. Rebecca Young, economist at Scotiabank, said Canada will increasingly face a fiscal credibility risk if it continues to extend programs. Rather than spread its financial aid equally across Canadian households, she said policymakers could instead be looking to stimulate capital spending in the private sector or offering childcare coverage that will allow mothers to return to the workforce full-time. I scroll down. Young said the government has essentially reduced the CERB by $100 per week, then changed its name to include the word recovery as part of a rebranding exercise. They've essentially replaced the CERB with a CERB-like compensation program. In a fiscal update earlier this summer, finance officials estimated that the middle third of Canadian households have roughly $1,600 in monthly expenses, including mortgages, a figure directly equal to its updated payout under the CRB. Economists are divided over whether Ottawa should have lowered the payouts to slightly below $1,600 as a way to incentivize workers or phase out the program as it nears the end of 2020. That's a great idea. Phase it out just as Christmas is coming, right? Oh, okay, and January 1st, you're not going to have any more money. Politically, it's suicide. Politically, it encourages those people then to keep the program going at least till another couple of months, February or whatever, right? Because people don't like kicking people out or right after Christmas. It's not good. People don't like that. So the policymakers here knew that. They're not unaware of that. Okay, all right. And so the recommendations are like that's not going to happen. Okay, that's why they extended it to the September. Okay, right. 2021. Okay, here is further financial troubles for the Trudeau government. This is Blacklock's reporter. Audit Environment CA under Catherine McKenna. So the Catherine McKenna's ministry finds irregularities, including something suspiciously like contract splitting. This practice is explicitly prohibited. Now, I don't have a Blacklock's report, Blacklock's subscription. Working on that, but. Link is in the description. Check it out. Waterloo MP Chegger says she won't resign over WE charity scandal. Yeah, I don't know. There was a point in time when Scott Bryson said he wasn't going to resign. Jody Wilson-Raybould said she wouldn't resign. So, I don't know. And I mean, she's Wilson-Raybould is still in cabinet, but will Chegger remain as part of the caucus? Will Chegger resign her seat entirely? Who knows? I don't know. Very interesting stuff. The fact that she even has to talk about it, really. Like, I mean, Morneau's gone down. Is that enough? Telford's still in her position. Trudeau's still in his. Is Chegger the next? Is Chegger the next sacrificial liberal? Right. Here is another WE Another We Charity thing. CBC busted panelist Amanda Alvaro, who defended We Charity, was paid $40,000 by the Trudeau government. CBC commentator and president of Pomp and Circumstance PR, Amanda Alvaro, failed to disclose to the public broadcaster that her company received $16,950 from the Department of Foreign Affairs, which would directly conflict with the journalistic standards and practices at the CBC. Yeah, you can't just have like direct pundits coming in to defend, oh, we wasn't that big a deal, it was fine. Here's Justin Trudeau's brother as well. We Charity paid Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's brother Alexander Trudeau more than $67,000 in talent fees and expenses in a 6-month period. Statement and details here. Blacklocks again. Check it out. Very interesting stuff. So We is still creating headlines for this Trudeau government. That can't be good. He can't be wanting that. Well, he doesn't want that. That's why he prorogued. But I don't think it's going to go away in September. All of this stuff's going to get brought back up. CTV media study says hundreds of Canadian radio stations, TV outlets risk closure. Well, shocking. Have you noticed how many like garbage commercials there are, like the Canadian government commercials all over radio? It's like more than 60% of the ads. It's COVID-19. It's stay safe, social distance. It's all sorts of like Canadian government garbage. It's really, really, and then provincial garbage and teachers union garbage. It's all kind of the same. My goodness. So no wonder they're dying. Like there's no ad revenue out there, right? Like that's what I'm saying. The only people buying ads right now are the government. So yeah, right? It's another form of stimulation, right? Like, yeah, we'll stimulate all these radio stations and make sure they've got lots of ad revenue. Yeah, and make sure those people are nice and programmed. Flatten the curve, blah, 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 right? Bull. Anyway, Global News is reporting Thursday's fiscal update will unveil biggest deficit in the history of Alberta. The province is set to release Alberta's first quarter fiscal update later this week, with Premier Jason Kenney said will show the largest deterioration of Alberta's finances since at least the 1930s. This is going to be the biggest deficit in the history of Alberta by a country mile, said Kenney. Kenney said Tuesday. On Thursday afternoon, Finance Minister Travis Toews will present an overview of Alberta's fiscal situation from 2019 to 2020 and the first quarter of 2020-2021. So that's the current quarter. Yeah. They're not in. It's not good. Okay, I went through this chart earlier. This is the age distribution of annual deaths in Canada and COVID deaths measured in blue versus orange. I don't know why I said purple there. And I think it's an interesting chart to note because, the usual deaths this year are I think they're lower compared to other flu years, and the risk posed by COVID to the lower age categories really isn't that much bigger than, say, your average flu season as well. So having all of these measures seems wild. Here's Edmonton Journal. City of Edmonton facing $565 million lawsuit over COVID-19 mandatory mask bylaw. Whew. An Edmonton man is suing the City of Edmonton for $565 million, citing nuisance and public health hazard created by the temporary mandatory mask bylaw. In a statement of claim filed in the Alberta Court of Queen's Bench Monday, Glenn Miller argued the new mask law has led to an increase of used masks on city streets and created a health crisis. The mandatory mask rule, in an effort to curb the spread of COVID-19, came into effect on August 1st, following a 10-3 council vote. The bylaw is applicable in all publicly accessible indoor spaces, including retail stores, restaurants, vehicle for hire services, and recreational facilities. By the discarding of face masks, and with the city knowing, or that it should have known, that it is unable to control the actions of the people, that the city has created a public health hazard for me and others, Miller stated. Miller is calling for City Council to rescind the bylaw within 10 days, and he will terminate the legal proceedings. Otherwise, he will be seeking $565 million in remediation. Reached by Post Media Wednesday morning, Miller said every time he goes out now in his Southside community, he sees masks littered on the ground. Everywhere I go, when I walk to places like Superstore or Southgate Mall, masks are all over the place, he said. It's unsanitary. Spokeswoman Lori Yanish said the city has raised a discarded mask and, has seen a rise in discarded mask litter as more masks are being worn since the bylaw came into effect. To address the increase, the city will be making litter kits available consisting of a litter grabber, gloves, garbage bags, and a public notice that can be posted outside of businesses. This seems super effective. Good job. The city is seeing an increase in discarded mask litter as more masks are being worn. We remind citizens to properly dispose of masks, face coverings, and other personal protective equipment. These items should be put in garbage bins, Yanish said in an email to Post Media. We are concerned about litter and doing additional communications work to address this issue. The mask exemption card program remains paused after distribution abruptly ended 2 weeks ago due to significant abuse of the program from residents who don't have a legitimate exemption. The exemptions are like the exemptions for the public health order say if the mask impedes your breathing at all, you have an exemption. You're allowed to not wear it. So I think it's funny that the Edmonton Journal is like, oh yeah, a whole bunch of people were saying they didn't have legitimate exemptions. A legitimate exemption is totally up to you. Like the paper doesn't have the right to say your exemption is not legit. Like that is absolutely unbelievably egregious of the paper. They can shove it. Seriously, unbelievable. Like seriously, it's so funny. Like it's so funny that people can pass judgment like that so casually, right? Like I'm gonna write about this guy. Oh, not legitimate. Come on, get real. Okay, here is what is this? Oh, this is the website masksformunicipalities.ca. Okay, so I like looking at citizen journalism and because man, like this is all we've got these days, right? And this person went through Masks for Municipalities. So this is Christina and mom, daughter, friend, wife, and she says, when I first saw this tweet, I thought James might have stumbled on a fake website promoting mask wearing to Canadian municipalities. Okay, and this is James Flack. He's saying, don't forget, Masks for Municipalities, their reward program is set up, the best socialist stooge. And she says, I decided to check it out myself since the Global Covenant of Mayors seemed to contain a list of Ontario mayors who felt the need to pass bylaws requiring mandatory masks to shop, bank, eat in restaurants, enter every public building, and to do business. This website has subsections for the following topics: home, why masks, how to require masks, leadership stories, awards, FAQ, take action, contact us. Awards, check out the awards page. The most fascinating part of the website, and this is the reason I'm showing this to you, after going on about the efficacy of masks. Efficacy means how well they work to do the thing they say they're going to do, which is stop COVID, according to the bureaucrats. And the masks say on them they don't stop viruses. Okay, back to this. Efficacy of masks, reasons why they must be mandated, and incentives and advice on how to implement mandatory masks. The website comes with this disclaimer, and the disclaimer says, "Ooh, I'm in the way." The disclaimer says, hilarious disclaimer. Hold on. Now it's trolling me. This website is provided for general information purposes only and does not constitute legal, medical, or other professional advice or an opinion of any kind. Users of this website are advised to seek specific legal, medical, and other professional advice. I wonder how many mayors were duped by this. I wonder how many people were taken in by this, professional-looking website. Looks okay, right? Loads a little slow, I guess. But here it is, Masks for Municipalities, right? Awards. Right, this looks really legit. It's got an SSL, right? That's locked. Shifting norms. Wearing masks in Canada is not the norm. Yeah, well, have you been outside lately? But yeah, the disclaimer is very interesting. There it is. This website is for general information purposes only. That means bullshit. It's bullshit. Okay. Last story for today. I know I'm long. Am I long? 28. Yeah, a little long. Okay. Here's Jim Cariolis. Jim Cariolis was removed from the Conservative leadership race because Aaron O'Toole has a chief of staff named, what was his name? He had ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, and Mr. Cariolis pointed that out. And Waleed Solomon. And Jim Cariolis pointed that out, and then Aaron O'Toole complained about him being Islamophobic and got him removed. So that Jim Cariolis is saying, how dare Justin Trudeau's MPs say that edgy Aaron O'Toole is a conservative pro-lifer against a carbon tax or a Paris Accord. He's redder than most of the Liberal Party caucus, so red that it's hard to tell he's less of a Pinko than Ford Nation. They got Aaron all wrong. So I was saying yesterday that I think that it's wrong. It's the wrong approach for the People's Party to fight also the Liberals and the Conservatives. I was saying we need to focus and say we can work with the Conservatives. I think that we need not to give him a chance to prove who he is, but I think that there are a lot of Canadians that Mr. O'Toole will resonate with, especially in light of Trudeau's corrupt right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of corruption in Justin Trudeau's cabinet, and there's a lot of questions that have no answers, and just bear more questions. So the longer Trudeau stays in power with this corrupt these corrupt people surrounding him, the more appealing Aaron O'Toole becomes, especially with his pedigree. He was a former Canadian Forces a lawyer and came to be an MP, blah, blah, blah. He's got a good resume. People are going to be at least look at that seriously. And if the People's Party can't work with people who are putting together pro-Canada policies that will start to undo what Trudeau does, then I think we need to make those overtures, try to build those bridges. But coming at it like you're all wrong, everyone's wrong, and there's nothing about it that you can even possibly contribute is not the wrong approach. Most Canadians aren't going to go with that, regardless of how right or wrong it is, okay? I believe that the Conservative Party itself has been corrupted into a globalist party. I believe that currently the break in liberal versus conservative is changing to globalist versus local governance, nationalist. And that's what I think this break represents. So, and I think Aaron O'Toole's trying to unify it, put it back to the liberal conservative. But if his party is globalist in nature, and if he's comfortable leading that globalist party, then that will be borne out in the policies he proposes. But if he puts forward pro-Canadian policies that help Canadian people, then you can work with that. As a politician, you should work with that until they show their true colors. And if they're globalist true colors, then you don't work with that. And then you call them out. But first, Trudeau is obviously a globalist, obviously selling out Canadian resources, and I don't think he's helping Canadians. Look at the violence that's been happening over the last 5 years. Since 2015 to now, look at what has happened. Look at how far apart Canadians are. Canadians are not more united in the last 5 years. The feminist, woke culture that Trudeau is trying to foster is nothing more than a facade, and the facade is breaking down because he's not what he's trying to sell, right? And so I think people are going to see that. And if Aaron O'Toole is as red as Mr. Cariolis and as Mr. Bernier seem to think that he is, then I don't think that he'll be able to hide that from his policies. And I think that that'll be pretty obvious to everybody. And we can beat them on policies, but we can't beat them if we're just screaming, "Red Tory, Red Tory." It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. People aren't going to go for it. They're just going to turn you off. True North is reporting this. I just wanted to show you this because Doug Ford, man, what happened to Doug Ford? This is Doug Ford's comments were in contrast to the praise he offered the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and Deputy Prime Minister Freeland last week. Quote, "We have a phenomenal relationship. I think the world of Deputy Prime Minister," that's Freeland, "we are able to get a lot accomplished just by communicating and collaborating. And along with the Prime Minister as well," said Ford. Earlier, Ford had called Trudeau a partner to all premiers, a sentiment which the Prime Minister seemed to return. Quote, you wonder why I'm always up here praising him, because he did an incredible job," Ford said of Trudeau. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Here's Justin Trudeau. When pressed to give a reason why Ford won't be campaigning for O'Toole, Ford told reporters he would take the high road. Okay, "I'm just going to work hard with Ontario, getting our economy back up and running, make sure everyone's safe here." So it's weird that he'll praise Trudeau and Freeland and won't praise the Conservative Party, the federal Conservative Party. I don't get it. I don't know. And again, I'm not a fan of the Conservative Party. I'm not a member of the Conservative Party. I don't trust the Conservative Party. Aaron O'Toole, jury's out. Doug Ford, I thought I trusted him, but he sounds very liberal here. Why is he saying specifically what did Trudeau do well? He closed flights early, closed the border early. He stopped people coming from infected areas. He didn't do any of those things. He's racked up the costs. He's spent a lot of money, but other than spending money, I don't think he's done anything. And I don't think he spent most of the money in Canada. I'd love to see a breakdown of how much money he's spent in Canada and how much he's sent out of Canada for support or whatever. And that includes to the WHO, and that includes all of the excess spending. Okay, I've gone way too long, but isn't this odd? Isn't this a strange turn for Doug Ford? It's a very strange turn. I don't know, and I don't know what the other options are. Who else do you vote for in Ontario? Right? The Liberals? Not going to happen. The NDP? Nope, not going to happen. So, who? Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful